Savannah Pope's a real estate broker in the Asheville, North Carolina market. She's a Coldwell Banker affiliate, and she's joining the podcast today. Savannah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you. I always love talking to brokers in the Asheville market. It's a place that's near and dear to our heart here in the Charlotte area. So great to meet you and connect. Savannah, before we dive into the Asheville market and some of the other areas in which you excel there in your area, share for listeners just a basic overview, kind of a 40,000 foot view of the kind of services that you offer, the types of buyers and sellers that you work best with, and what your work looks like day to day there in Asheville.
Absolutely. So I work with a good variety of both buyers and sellers, I would say. I also specialize in new construction. That has been near and dear to my heart. I was actually introduced to new construction early in my career through our president, Terry King. She, really helped me set the platform for being in new construction sales, because it is definitely a different bear than just your traditional residential sales. But through that, I was really able to enhance on, my marketing, and also, doing that day to day with sellers now. It's really, we're in a market where I feel like you have to really differentiate yourself from other, not just agents, but listings on the market, the way that our real estate market is turning out to level out, I will say loosely. But really, I have a good variety of my clients, and really just trying to provide the most valuable service to them and lead them on one of the biggest transactions of their life.
Yeah, we chatted a little bit before we hit record about your background. I'd love to share that as well for listeners. Dive into a little bit of what you were doing, your career prior to going into real estate, and then what inspired you to pursue a career in real estate.
Absolutely. So I have been selling real estate now for 7 years, but prior to, I graduated from Western Carolina University in a small town of Cullowhee in the mountains. And there I was able to obtain my bachelor's degree in marketing. And while I was there, I was definitely one of those students where I was struggling to figure out what I was going to do with my career, and jumped around, but somehow I landed up in a marketing class one day, and things just really hit home for me. And I personally think marketing is fun and exciting. So whenever I was in college, I was actually able to do an internship as a marketing coordinator at a local boutique real estate company here in Asheville. And so I did that for my senior year, and really that was the first time I was exposed to real estate and what it looks like. I saw a lot of the behind the scenes while doing marketing, but it was also hands-on in some areas. So I would say that was really my introduction to real estate there. And I'll be honest, I remember sitting down before my internship was over, and the owners asked me, do you want to get your real estate license and continue working with us? It wouldn't be in a marketing position, but you could sell. And I told them absolutely not, that they were crazy. And here I am. That was probably 10 years ago, 10 years later, and have been selling. But really, being in marketing and having my background, I feel like has really allowed me to provide a lot of value to my clients, because, we really have to stand out, not just as an agent, but also, providing marketing to sellers and just providing value that way. So.
Well, let's stay on the marketing subject. It's a topic that I love to talk about and gain insights from agents who really have a strength in that space. Do you lean more digital marketing, print marketing, or pretty diverse channels?
I would say more digital marketing, really focusing on social media. Facebook and Instagram have really been my two platforms that I focus on. And I've, taken a lot of classes and looked into the different platforms and how to utilize them as a real estate agent. And for me, and the sphere and the target market that I'm trying to attract are really on Facebook and Instagram. TikTok, I've heard, is an amazing platform for video, but you are targeting a younger audience. So it's really who you were trying to attract. But I would say digital has been the area that I thrive best in, and really also trying to amp up with the videos and everything this year too, because that is, I can say, probably the most valuable thing I have been doing for my business since the first of the year. And, I've seen it, the return is amazing.
Yeah, I follow you, of course, on Instagram, the Epic Agents Podcast Instagram account, and your content has been outstanding this year.
Thank
and
you.
Going as far back as since I've been following, and you're really doing some great work with video. Video absolutely is got to be a priority when it comes to digital marketing for agents in 2026, if it wasn't already in 2025. And I agree with you too that Meta, Facebook, and Instagram are the two. In my humble opinion, are the two places that real estate agents should focus their social media marketing. I don't. We could talk about other platforms. I know some agents love LinkedIn. I do not. And TikTok, I think, is a completely separate conversation as well. There's probably some value there, but I feel like TikTok really leans entertainment. I don't know anyone who scrolls TikTok
looks for an
information.
Agent.
Right.
Agreed. I don't know anybody looking for a real estate agent on TikTok. So, and Meta, makes it so easy to share content back and forth between Instagram and Facebook that it's the easiest and I think the most effective.
I agree. What about running ads on Facebook and Instagram? Is that something that you've had some experience with as well?
Absolutely. So I have done a little bit of advertising on Facebook for listings, and I've seen it's very difficult to figure out a good target market for ads on Facebook. I feel like, because obviously the more that you pay, the more people that you reach. But I've dabbed, dip my toes in the water a little bit with that, but I have seen, I think, a better return for doing, especially with the video, trying to get a paid ad through that with Instagram and a click through to your Instagram profile to try and build that and your following there.
I agree. Yeah, I think that's a great way to grow your following, is by boosting excellent content that you're already publishing. Advertising for home sales, obviously with fair housing and compliance reasons, it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to really narrow down a target audience for ads when boosting listings. But I do love like the videos, the reels that you publish that are very lifestyle oriented and informational, but very aesthetically like really well done, well produced reels. I think those are great pieces of content for like other realtors to kind of mimic or use as inspiration for their own content.
Absolutely. And that's something I tell not just the agents in our office when I am teaching, social media classes or talking with any agent for that matter, is a lot of agents are intimidated by social media marketing. And I think that's because they just don't know where to start. They think that, they have to go to school for it, or they have to have 5,000 followers. And that's not the case. I get a lot of inspiration for my posts and my content through other agents that I'm following. And I'm by no means saying, copy them verbatim, but the wheel is already there. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel. You can put your custom stamp and brand and personalize it to your liking and be providing the same content, but it looks a little bit different. But it's not like you're just having to start from scratch. And that's really where I get a lot of my ideas from. And also on my, social media, you've probably seen I try to sprinkle in a little bit of who I am and my family. I always say I don't like to be just a real estate robot. I am a person. I do have a life outside of real estate. And sometimes, people and your followers are going to connect with you on that level before even a real estate level. And, they might have a 2-year-old too, like I do, or they might, have a yellow lab or something like that. And they're going to be easier to connect with you that way. And then real estate's going to be just a bonus.
Yeah. Labrador parents bond very quickly with other Labrador parents.
Oh, yes.
For sure. So coming from a a
It's a
lab
strong
dad.
bond.
I totally get. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I love that. You know, one of my favorite folks here locally, who's an outstanding and exceptional real estate broker in the luxury space here in the Charlotte market, and has been a guest in this podcast. Um, Likes to, kind of during our conversation, he mentioned that, he has a big Instagram following, and but he says, I get so much more positive. He says he's always surprised at the positive response he gets from his more personal posts that kind of share a little bit about his daily life or his interests and passions outside of real estate, or even a little bit of family life as well. And so I think that's really important to kind of find a balance there between, you definitely want to share who you are, and kind of to your point, that's a great way for those who follow you or aren't personally acquainted with you to kind of connect as well, find some common ground there.
Exactly. Absolutely. I actually connected with an agent last week and received a referral from her because she found me on social media, and her clients were looking for someone like her, of the same, real estate background, but also from a personal standpoint. And having that personal side, trickled into my social media allowed her to really be able to relate to me on a more personal level, before recommending me to her clients. And I think that really helped. And anytime I'm in a situation now where I'm interviewing for a listing or a referral for a client, I'm really trying to push them to my social media to show not just my marketing expertise for my listings and my clients, but also, from a personal side, because a lot of times they want to know who they're putting their client in the hands of.
For sure. You used the word relate. I think that's worth kind of emphasizing, the importance of being relatable. And I think that's something that you do extremely well with your social media marketing. I think that that's something maybe, a lot of agents, myself included, totally guilty, by the way, of not sharing enough relatable content. I do once in a while, but probably need to lean a little bit more into that. So I think that's really, really important. Your marketing degree is, I think, I've had a few guests on the podcast that have built successful real estate careers who began with, who majored in marketing in college. And I think that makes total sense and is such a great fit for a successful real estate broker. I've said it many times in this podcast, and others have said it as well, that one of the first questions a prospective real estate broker should ask themselves is, how do I intend to generate business? And having experience and formal education and formal training in marketing it's a great start for sure, to be able to start generating your own business. So I love that. I think that's definitely, that makes sense. And I always kind of perk up when a guest says that they majored in marketing, and that led to a career in real estate. Let's talk a little bit about the Asheville market. What's going on in 2026? How was 2025? 2024 was obviously devastating for so many folks and region, for the region and everyone from Boone to Southwest North Carolina. Recovered, still recovering, but for the most part, seems to have rebounded pretty well, thanks to, tourism and the support of the local communities. And I would love to know a little bit about how'd the pivot go in 2025, and how is 2026 starting out?
Absolutely. So we are definitely still recovering from Helene. 2024 was, while it was, I thought, going to be a really good year, when, Helene hit, it changed a lot. But in 2025, I would say, was not a normal market. We were still recovering from Helene, and tourism was down. People, the news and the media was saying, don't come to Asheville. And while, people were still recovering personally in businesses, we needed the support from our tourism industry because tourism is what drives our Asheville market. And so real estate wise, 2024 was, I don't want to say slow, but it was, we were making it. And you know, there was some movement with interest when interest rates would drop. But really we didn't see that, I would say, until probably spring, fall, just because we had to have time for people to get back to a little bit of normalcy. And I say that loosely. Everybody was more in recovery mode than what's next. So 2026 so far, I think, has really been on the up and up. Overall, we're not sitting at a stable market of 6 months worth of inventory. We're still in what they would call a seller's market. We're hovering right around 4 months worth of inventory, but we are seeing movement, especially since interest rates dropped for the first time, or the lowest since 2022. That really caused a lot of buyer traffic. And I'll be honest, I was sitting there in January going, are we going to have a 2025 again, or are things going to pick up? And then, people just start coming out of the woodworks. I think that is for a lot of reasons. Helene was in the past, and I think people were getting back to some sort of, normal life, and people are coming here now that things have recovered a little bit. But also with interest rates, I think everybody was hoping they would go back to 3.5%. And, that's not going to happen, I don't think, maybe not in my lifetime. But I think they were sitting on the sidelines for a long time waiting to see what was going to happen. And that little dip in interest rates drove a lot of not just buyers, but sellers into the market as well. So the real estate market is moving for sellers. I think we're having to have conversations of, this is not 2020 anymore. This is not 2021 anymore. Your house will sell and we will get traffic, but you need to be priced appropriately. We don't need to be shooting for the stars anymore and unreasonable asking prices, because buyers are out there, but buyers also are not having to jump at their first house that they see anymore. They do have a little bit more leverage. So for buyers and sellers both, we're kind of having to figure out what our new market looks like and getting back to, I say stable, loosely, but more of a normal market for our area.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I haven't, it's been a little while since I've visited Asheville. Looking forward to visiting this summer for sure, and some areas around Asheville as well that I've got my mindset on visiting. I haven't been further southwest than the Brevard area, and I would really like to go see the Highlands, Cashiers area as well, which is it's hard to believe that how long a drive that is from Charlotte, North Carolina. You're still in North Carolina, but
right.
But I love
up the mountain.
Yeah. But I love visiting Asheville, so looking forward to getting over there for sure. I had a conversation with another broker recently from Asheville that we talked a little bit about the short-term rental market and how that's kind of changed a little bit over the last several years. Mm-hmm. And Asheville was one of those hotspots during COVID, was it not? Where I probably shouldn't use those words in the same sentence, but one of those one of those fast-growing areas where during the pandemic where short-term rentals really boomed. What is that looking like in 25 and 26?
Yeah, so it was definitely one of the more hot markets for short-term rentals. But I will say in 2025, 2026, we have seen some of those rentals start popping up on the market. I think that during the COVID times that our market got oversaturated with them a little bit. And also, there were regulations then being put into place to try and protect, the hotel industry as well. So adding that on top of an oversaturated short-term rental market, and reservations being down and bookings being not as hot as they were, we've started seeing some of those for sale. And I mean, people do look for short-term rentals in the Asheville area still to this day. I don't think it is as desirable because people are don't have as much free time to come and do and, work from a short-term rental or something like that, like they did in COVID. So I think we'll continue seeing those pop up, but we do have a lot of options here for short-term rentals, just trying to, attract the tourism industry, because Asheville is a feeder market. So while, other areas are affected sometimes by the local economy or other things of that nature, Asheville is more of, we are affected, but it takes a little bit more time, because people who do come to Asheville are a lot of times, not just coming for jobs, but also for, second homes or for tourism or luxury or something like that. So that's really what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In so many areas of the Southeast and the Southwest, skyrocketed, the number of Airbnbs and short-term rentals in these markets skyrocketed. But of course, the mountains will always have that short-term rental market and appeal for visitors. But Charleston, you mentioned that Asheville is, has placed some regulations that will help protect the hospitality industry there in the city, which is so important because it is a tourism, or a big part of the economy in Asheville is must rely on tourism. And, you've got some spectacular hotels there in the Asheville area. Some are world famous, and even some that are less famous that are downtown are still wonderful places to stay. So that makes sense. I had a conversation about that with another guest on the podcast from Charleston a couple months ago, and he had mentioned the same thing, that Charleston does the same thing because they rely so much on tourism. Their hospitality industry is such a big part of their economy that they've had to kind of regulate the number of properties that are eligible for short-term rental, renting. So that makes a lot of sense. How's the weather over there in Asheville right now?
It is beautiful today. It's going to be 70 something degrees today, but tomorrow it might be 20. We are definitely in that season where it's great one day, and then you're in a spring dress, and then you might be in a parka the next day. You just never know. But no, it's been great. We're starting to see a lot of people come here and visit these tourism, like the Biltmore and Grove Park and everything like that. So spring really ramps up everything here.
It's so pretty there in the spring. That spring in the high country of North Carolina, I was in, my wife and I were in Banner Elk last weekend, and Friday it was 75 degrees, and Saturday the high was like 42. So
exactly.
Take
your allergy medicine. That's where we're
the other
at.
one didn't. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. One of us packed correctly for that trip and the other one didn't. I won't say which one's which, but anyway, that's pretty typical for North Carolina, but especially the high country as well. What are your plans for 2026? Any new areas in which you want to start, expand your marketing strategy into? Any other channels or technology that you're looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'm calling 2026 my comeback year. For the past 2 years, I had my daughter in 2023, at the end of 2023. And while I was still selling real estate at that time, obviously, having a newborn and a baby, I was trying to soak in as much time. So while I still had very successful years at the end, for 2024, 2025, I think I was trying to figure out a good balance of being a mom, but also being a real estate professional, because real estate is what I love, and it is a career path of mine that I plan to continue. So 2026 being I call it my comeback year, I think really just diving full, totally back into real estate, and with the video, that has been one thing that I made a commitment to at the first of the year. I said, I'm going to go all in with marketing, not just from what I do personally, but try and partner with videographers, photographers in the area, and go all in with video, professional photography. I have a branding session at least once a year. I think that on top of video just really helps level up your content. Organic content is fine, but I think having that and being able to show that to not just your followers, but any potential client really, really helps. So going all in with marketing efforts. But I would say this is the year of video. You mentioned it earlier, 2025. I think people were starting to kind of catch on to that. But now 2026, I think that if you are not doing that, you could, get left behind, because it's not just about personal branding, but also, just really trying to show your clients how, you can help position them against other competition, because as I mentioned, buyers aren't having to jump on the first thing anymore. So what can you do to help them stand out amongst their competition and really differentiate yourself? But I just plan to really continue with the video for not just personal branding, but listings, and really see where that gets me, because it's helped a lot just in the first quarter. So I'm very excited to see how it continues. It can only get better.
Yeah, and it takes a commitment. You said that word, and that is so true. I think that's worth also underscoring how important it is to commit to the strategy and give it time to work. And the investment, you're making the right investment. You partner with a professional videographer, photographer. It's an investment. It's a huge commitment. It's hard to do. I get it, but you're doing it the right way. And I think it's an amazing strategy. So I'm glad to see and glad to hear that you've already seen some great results in the short term. But I think longer term, it's just going to continue to compound. And it's going to be really amazing for your business.
People ask me all the time, is it not uncomfortable doing these videos, or is it not uncomfortable, doing all this professional photography? And it is, but with any investment in yourself, I feel like, you're going to have those times of, being uncomfortable and being out of your comfort zone. But I don't feel that, if I'm not doing these things, my business isn't going to be able to grow. Those sayings, you can never get out of your comfort zone, or by not being uncomfortable at some point. So I think that really just trying to push myself, not just from a personal level, but also professional level, will really help and work out well in the long run and see full return.
I think that's also worth noting, that the fact that you're vulnerable there for just a second and shared how that being comfortable on camera and in video and so forth doesn't come naturally. And looking at your content, one would think that you are very comfortable on camera. But I love it when an agent says that, because you come across so polished and professional. But I love it when an agent shares, yeah, but you know what, it's really not a comfortable thing. It's like really outside my comfort zone. Because I think that's holding a lot of agents back when they look at their competition, so to speak, and they look at how great you act on camera, how great you communicate, and how great the videos come out. That we look at ourselves and go, oh, I can never do that. I mean, I just don't. I'm not comfortable on camera. Well, the truth is, none of us are, right? None of us are comfortable on camera.
Right. And you're your biggest critic. I think that if I watched the video back, when we're there recording and everything, I always tell my videographer, I'm like, don't let me see it. Don't let me hear it. You do what you do. And it always comes out great. But, you are your biggest critic. And I think that is what is holding people back, because they think that, you need to be one of these selling sunset real estate agents who it looks so glamorous on, not just maybe ads or TV or social media or anything like that. And everybody has to start somewhere. So I think it's just finding what you're comfortable with. I think a lot of people try to do too much at one time when getting started, and not just with social media, but in general. And I think finding one thing in a niche that fits you and what you're comfortable with, and trying to thrive with that is the best plan of action. Because if you do too much, something is inevitably going to be left behind. So
I had a guest on the podcast a year and a half ago, a friend of mine here locally, who's also a tremendous broker, and she is her video marketing, she was one of the first in our market to really start leveraging YouTube, and she's done a fantastic job at it. And I asked her, I was like, I mentioned the same thing. Agents and most people in general have just a natural fear of speaking on camera, and you have to do multiple retakes. And she said, well, yeah, it doesn't come naturally to me either. She goes, full disclosure, there may have been some tequila involved before my first video. So,
I don't blame
I was
you.
like, okay. So it's cool to hear,
It makes you more
like
comfortable
it's not,
for sure.
yeah, I mean, it's just cool. It's cool to hear that agents who appear to be so comfortable on camera admit, for the rest of us, and say, look, yeah, we're all uncomfortable. We're all scared to do it, but you just gotta power through it, and you get a little bit better every time, right?
Absolutely. I think when I first started, it would take about 3 or 4 takes of each reel, and now it's sometimes I can hit it on one, and I'm like, I'm getting better. So, and also having someone, a videographer that you're comfortable with and can really guide you makes a really big difference. Not just with scripts, but also trying to help position you in the best way. So working with someone you're comfortable with makes a really big difference, and trusting them, because it makes a world of a difference.
Well, before I let you go, Savannah, let me ask you real quick for newer agents on that topic of marketing. What sort of piece of advice would you have for newer agents who are maybe struggling, looking at their social media, their website, or whatever it is that the assets that they have to market their business, and they just kind of feel stuck and they don't know what to do? What would your advice be for them?
Great question. So my biggest advice that I can give them is just start. I think that a lot of people are just very scared to take the first jump. And so just by starting and trying to focus on, it might not be 2 platforms. You might just be focusing on Instagram and, picking one. But I think finding and starting with one platform and looking at other agents' content that is out there, because as I mentioned, a lot of agents are afraid that we're going to have to reinvent the wheel, and I don't know where to start. But by following other agents on social media, that can give you a good idea of examples of content. And Canva is free. Canva is an amazing tool for graphics and design and all of that newer agents can use if their company doesn't provide any kind of marketing platform or something to design like that. But following along with other agents, just starting and trying to put your own stamp on content that's already out there, because that's the best way to start. Later down the road, you can get really creative with your own branding and videos and all of that. But just getting comfortable with where you're at now, I think is the biggest thing, because I think it's holding a lot of people back. And there are so many tools and resources out there that are free that can help. I mean, I know Canva has a lot of templates for real estate agents where you can just plug and play by putting in your content that way. So utilizing that and just picking one platform and starting there is the best advice I can give.
That's great advice. Yeah, just start, pick one platform, right? Pick one channel and focus on that for a little while. And yeah, and YouTube is a great university as well. So, if you have questions about how do I do something, how do I edit a reel, or how do I use CapCut, or how do I use Canva? It's all out there. It's all out there and super easy to learn. Savannah,
Absolutely.
Savannah, I really appreciate you joining the podcast. This has been great. Great to connect with you. And I really appreciate you sharing so much valuable knowledge and experience, especially on the marketing side. Really appreciate it. For listeners who want to learn more about you and connect with you, and of course, follow you on Instagram, how can they do that?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me, Jeff. I really appreciate it. And anyone wanting to follow me on social media or even have a conversation about getting started with social media and what that looks like, I'm happy to do so. You can follow me on my Instagram. It's Savannah Pope Realtor. And feel free to follow. And if, like I said, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out, because I was new one day and I'm continuing to help other agents in our office as well with their marketing. And we can do it together. We can collaborate together. But I'm happy to answer any questions, and hopefully you can get some inspiration from my content and learn that you can do it too.
I love that. Thanks for being so generous, Savannah. I really appreciate it. I'll have a link, of course, to your Instagram account on in the description for this episode. For those who follow Epic Agents Podcast on Instagram, obviously I'll tag your account when I release this episode as well. And once again, just truly appreciate it. Savannah Pope, Coldwell Banker, Epic Agent in Asheville, North Carolina. Savannah, thanks again for joining.
Thank you, Jeff.